Are we off? We're off, right. So, still Tuesday, 3rd of January, and second of the 3 Indian whiskies that we're going to do. Although this particular one, as with the one I've just done, is whiskey in the loosest sense of the word. You wouldn't find it in the UK being sold as whiskey, let's put it that way. So, the next one was also donated by Andrew A.P. Butler, and this is what it is. I'll move his picture out of the way. Thank you, Andrew. It's called Signature, and it's another miniature that he, I think he got them, a friend brought them back from India. So he's had half the miniature as he did with the other one, but he's given me the other half very kindly. This is another miniature, as with the Royal Challenge that I've just had, where it's a 60mm rather than a 50mm unusually. So it's actually given me the chance to have the full 25mm. And this is also known as McDowell's Signature, and you may, if you sort of interested in the whiskey industry and have seen on the news a couple of months ago, McDowell's is owned by Diageo, so it's a company called United Spirits, and I covered this off in the Royal Challenge, which I've just done. So go back and see that one if you can, but as a brief pressy, United Spirits is a subsidiary of a company called United Breweries. Very, very big company, essentially third in line worldwide to Diageo and Pernod Ricard. And United Spirits were, Diageo actually got a controlling stake of United Spirits in 2012, where they acquired enough to get them to 55%. So they've got a controlling stake in it. And United Spirits are also responsible for Bagpiper, which was the other Indian I had way back at when, and the Royal Challenge that I've just had. So in the last few months, I'm sure it was within 6 months ago, Diageo were basically told you can't have McDowell's as a brand because it implies Scotch. It implies it's from Scotland, it's deceiving, it's deceptive, you cannot call McDowell's. So they've basically done a deal with the Scotch Whisky Association where in India they've kept the brand of McDowell's, but if they want to go further afield, because Royal Challenge is for sale in America, so if you want to then sell McDowell's elsewhere, you've got to call it something else. So this has previously been known as McDowell's Signature. There's a chance that if you do find this outside of India, it will just be called Signature. So this was launched in 1994. Now, United Spirits HQ is in a place called Karnataka, which is in Bangalore. And I don't actually know, that's where the HQ is, but I'm willing to bet that they hadn't actually made it there. It was aimed at the super premium market. So we're talking top end of the Indian whiskey drinking market. Depends on what your opinions are of whiskey, of Indian whiskey, as to how good that super premium market is. Now, it's been pulled back a little bit in the sort of early 2000s. I think it was then kind of like, right, we're reining this back in, we're going to go for the premium. Where the delineation is, I don't know. Price-wise, I don't know how much this is going to be outside of India, if you can find it. It does actually have the price on it, saying the recommended price is 80.15 rupees, where I think it's 0.15, 80 rupees, whereas the Royal Challenge I had was 61 rupees. Now, I've got the United Spirits website up because Royal Challenge did make me laugh quite a lot. So, Signature is a distinctive handcrafted whiskey born out of master blender Caroline Martin's passion for whiskey making, hence giving a true character to this 1.7 million plus cases brand. Oh, well done, you've sold lots. Caroline Martin, no idea who she is, couldn't find a picture of her, nothing. A rare whiskey with 100% aged Indian malts blended to perfection with aged Islay and Highland Scotch whiskies for that full-bodied peaty character recognised and rewarded the world over. Interesting, because that's not what I've read elsewhere. It's been a pioneer in driving initiatives that redefine premium whiskies in India. Oh, here we go. Marketing bullshit. With the upcoming relaunch, the brand is set on the journey of inspiring people to make a mark on the world by starting up in life and following their passion. Right, okay. So there is a Signature Rare Aged and Signature Premium Grain Whiskey. So this is the Signature Rare Aged, and this is what the bottle looks like, which I think, even with the relaunch, isn't too dissimilar to the miniature that I've got. So apparently, according to United Spirits, who is the owners, this is a blend of aged Indian malts with aged Islay and Highland Scotch whiskies. Now, Royal Challenge is also on this website, and if you watch that video, you'll know that it talked about having Indian whiskies and Scotch whiskies, but it didn't say anything about having molasses-based spirit, which has been reported as having that. So I would not be surprised if this is exactly the same. This is potentially a combination of Scotch and Indian malts and molasses neutral spirit. They're just not saying it. They're not putting it on there. They're not even hinting at it, which is a little bit dodgy, but you know, why would you admit to it? So I'm going to go with this is molasses based with a percentage of Scotch and Indian whiskey, Indian malt whiskey, should we call it. However, with it being owned by Diageo, you've got to wonder if they have got Islay whiskey in it and they have got Highland whiskey in it, what distilleries are they from? Interestingly. Now, does it actually say Scotch malt or does it say Scotch? See, it just says Scotch whiskies. It doesn't say anything about being malt whiskies, because it could just be grain whiskey. Diageo own the grain distillery at Cameron Bridge, for example, where they make the magnificent Hay Club. So what's to say that they're putting a couple of bottles of Lagavulin in, but they're also putting half a ton of Cameron Bridge grain whiskey in, and they're just calling it Scotch whiskies. Now, one thing I did also notice is there was a couple of articles based in India where they were talking about Signature and Royal Challenge, and they do confuse Scotch with whiskies in general. So they say, oh, this is an Indian Scotch whiskey. There's no such thing. It's not from Scotland. There is some of this in Scotland, but it's not a Scotch whiskey because it's not from Scotland. So, anyway, slightly darker than the Royal Challenge that I've just had, but I am going with molasses-based neutral spirit, and this again is 42.8%, as is this one, as is the next one I'm going to have. So for some reason in India, 42.8% seems to be the cut-off point. Maybe it's a legal thing, I've no idea. It might be the equivalent of 40% in Scotland and America, where that's the legal minimum, but it's just odd how 42.8% is the very, very specific ABV of the ones that I'm doing. So slightly darker than the Royal Challenge was, more of an amber colour. Whether colouring's been added to it, I don't know. It's entirely possible, but on the Royal Challenge I didn't pick any of that colouring's been added element to it. Although on this there is a little bit of that. Now, this isn't quite as spirity as the Royal Challenge. This is why I wanted to do the three together tonight as well, because it's a different type of whiskey. I need something to compare, you know, I almost need like the control to then work off on the three of them, because if I did a different night on each of them, or if I did two and then one on in a couple of nights time, I wouldn't be able to remember, because my memory is shocking, what the other two were like, to do a bit of a comparison. So ideally you really need to see these three videos in a row, because this isn't quite as spirity. It's got an edge to it, and it's got that slight rubbing alcohol content, but it's not quite as clean and as spirity. There is actually a bit of richness to this. There is a bit more depth. There's sweetness to it. There's almost maltiness to it. It's definitely more whiskey-ish than the Royal Challenge was. Like I say, it's still got that slight element of kind of methylated spirits, but it's nowhere near as prominent as it was. There is definitely more character to it. You could nose this and go, okay, it's a whiskey. I've no idea where it's from, but it's definitely a whiskey. I was about to say, on the nose, no element of peat whatsoever. On the palate, it's very smooth, it's very inoffensive. There isn't a great deal to it, but there is something that's slightly peaty about it. What? My wife's being annoying. She stood at the door making faces at me. That almost suggests to me that there could be some peated in this, but I'm not 100% certain. There's something in it, but it's very smooth. It's very, very inoffensive, but there is just this slight spark of something which could be peat, but I'm not 100% certain. I don't know. I still wouldn't pick it as Scotch, but it's more whiskey than the Royal Challenge was. It's not spirity, it's got character to it. It still needs to be mixed. It's still not great drinking it neat, it's still too sharp. Not sour, but there's that oaky character to it as well. It's definitely been aged in a cask. It's just got slightly more to it than the Royal Challenge has. I still wouldn't recommend it. It's still made to be mixed. It's still, the character that's there is to be mixed with Coke or mixed with Sprite or soda water or something like that. But it is more drinkable. It is one where you could put it on a blind tasting and it wouldn't necessarily fool people, but some people would think, oh, it's not too bad, and might be a bit surprised when you tell them that it's Indian. I don't think they'd rush out and buy a bottle, to be perfectly honest, but it's not dreadful. It's not brilliant though. It really isn't brilliant. It's quite unbalanced. It needs more depth. It needs more richness, more sweetness, more maltiness. It's still obvious that it's not all malt whiskey. That's the thing with it. It's just, you almost have to take it as a kind of generic spirit rather than try and look at this as a whiskey, because it's not a whiskey, because it's molasses based neutral grain spirit for the most part, and therefore you're looking at it a completely different angle, because it's almost a completely different drink. Yeah, it shouldn't really be called whiskey. It's okay, it's fine, but again, I wouldn't drink it neat. This is made to be mixed, so this is a super premium spirit that you're going to bung a load of Coke in, really. It's intriguing. And like I say, if you put it on a tasting and did it blind, because if you put it on a tasting and told people what it was to start with beforehand, they'd instantly go, oh, it's absolutely terrible. But if you do it blind, I think you might find a couple of people going, oh, it's not too bad. It's not fantastic, but it's okay. It's got some decent characters. And then you go, oh, by the way, it's Indian. And one of two things would happen. They'd either turn around and go, oh, really? Oh, well, that surprises me. Or, oh, well, yes, well, I knew it was rubbish all along, because you get that type of people. But considering what the bagpipe was like, considering there is something there, there is arguably a peaty character to it, because I just got it then. I just got this very, very subtle, quick burst of like a sweet peat, which suggests to me there is some peated whiskey in it. It's a tiny amount, it really is, but I think that's what's making this slightly more interesting, because it's just there in the background, and it just makes it drinkable and kind of, all right, well, I'll give it half a chance. It's not obvious. It's not like, oh God, this tastes Lagavulin. It's just all of a sudden, kind of underlying this quite sharp spiritiness, is this little element of peat going, oh, hello, where did you come from? And it actually makes it interesting. But again, it's this is to be made, to be mixed. So putting it in that context, it is a better Indian whiskey. Does it compare to Scotch? Does it compare to bourbon? Does it compare to Irish? No, not really. But I don't think you can, to give it a chance. So yes, interesting. Andrew, thank you very, very much for that, and also for the Royal Challenge beforehand, because the next Indian you didn't supply. I do apologise. But yeah, interesting. I wouldn't go searching it out unless you can get a miniature of it, or you want to split it with some friends and give it a go. But I would recommend, if you're going to try it with other people, don't tell them where it's from first. Let them try and figure out, and you might surprise some people. Right, I'll see you in the next one. Cheers.